Well, thank you for this opportunity to present our very encouraging results from Myrtelle, Inc. My name is Michael Mahonen. It's a bit unusual that you'll hear a neurosurgeon speak at this meeting. It's almost embarrassing. You would think with all the brain access we need, you'd have more neurosurgeons here. But I got involved with Myrtelle to try to help bridge this gap between clinical medicine and really outstanding gene therapy. And that's how I got involved. And what I like about being involved with this is I've seen the heartbreak of Canavan disease and what these families go through. I saw my first Canavan patient over 30 years ago when I was at University of Iowa. And typically, and this is how we've treated them ever since then before we had a gene therapy treatment, is they come in with a big head, they come in delayed and they're floppy. We put a shunt on their brain, we drain the water out, and we send them over to occupational and physical therapy, and they basically die. And that's been the natural history for Canavan disease until we have finally discovered a gene therapy for Canavan disease and potentially a cure. So our company, Myrtelle, was founded in 2001. We have a rock star with a wealth of knowledge in Canavan's disease, Paul Leone, who's been doing it for over 30 years, was really the driver behind the gene therapy for Canavan disease. Progressed fairly rapidly since 2021 and 2024. We were one of, it's actually 7 companies ultimately in 2024 that were selected by the CBR to participate in the START program. And I'll comment on that later, but it's really been a joy to deal with the FDA, and you don't hear those words coming out of somebody like me very much, who's had many negative interactions with the FDA over the last 3 decades. So to date, we've treated 15 patients with Canavan. 14 will have 1-year data near the end of this year, and I'll go over some of the data points on this during my talk. But the FDA has also acknowledged 2 important points, that we have endpoints that we can use as surrogate markers, which is nice if you want an accelerated approval, but we really do want a traditional approval. And a feather in our cap is that we published in Nature Medicine just last month. Olga Femini, our co-chief scientific officer, is the lead author on this manuscript. So what is Canavan disease? And if you look at this brain here in the far right of this slide, look at all the little sponges you have in the back half of the brain. So this is essentially a degenerative brain disease where the brain is rotting away. I haven't seen a brain like that clinically since I saw Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease or Kuru, where the brain just degenerates so fast from prion disease. But that's what happens in these leukodystrophies. Canavan disease is one of about 57 leukodystrophies that we have. And this is pretty common that you get not complete, like degeneration of the white matter. It doesn't form, so you're not forming the tracks. And if you look at the brain mass of these patients that are not treated, when they get out there at about 5 years, they start to have significant neurological problems. This was the first patient I ever saw with Canavan disease. It was part of the trial. And this child was under 1 year of age when that brain MRI was completed. And you can see already the toll that the disease has taken on the brain tissue with the spongiform appearance and loss of the white matter tracks. Our secret sauce, if I can call it that, is a vector that targets the oligodendrocytes. So we have multiple cells in the brain called astrocytes. The astrocytes have different types of subsets, and one of these is an oligodendrocyte. The oligodendrocyte is what makes myelin. So if you look at the diagram, the myelin is that blue coat that's on top of the nerves. And you need that myelin coat, just like you need a plastic coating on electrical wires to conduct an electrical signal. If you don't have that, then you don't have an electrical signal that is being conducted. So that's the premise of why we're targeting the oligodendrocytes. When we presented our initial data to the FDA, they were excited about it, we were excited about it, patients were excited about it, and this is why we got multiple LODs. As you can see on the far right, we got a fast track, we got the rare pediatric disease designation, priority review, EMA advanced therapeutic designation, the RMAT designation. So we're deep into the program. We're approaching asking the FDA very soon about a biological licensing agreement soon. And we have 9 international patent families of capsids for this. So how do we and why do we want to target the oligodendrocyte in these patients? We'll talk about that in just a second. Here's a patient that is very almost exemplary for what you get when you have Canavan disease. He has no head control. He has no peripheral limb control. The examiner has to do the bulk of the work to support him. And this child is just over 1 year of age at this point. Now, we've treated this child. Let me go back to that slide for a second. That one went out of order. Now look at the child here when he's about 6 months out after treatment. He has good intrinsic finger control. He's holding up his head. He's holding up his back. And we got to see the child this summer at the NTSAD meeting. And here he is on the right taking steps. So this is miraculous to me as a treating physician. I would have never thought a Canavan disease patient would have such motor function. And this is he's our rock star. If you treat an older patient, you're not going to see this degree of improvement because you get this spongiform appearance to the brain. Why do we target the oligodendrocytes? We went back a slide here. We target the ASPA gene. So we want to transvect ASPA, aspartyl-arylase. That's what we want to take into the oligodendrocyte. Why do we do that? The NAA is what really is kind of a toxic compound unless it's broken down. So NAA, which is just a molecule in the neurons, goes through the cellular membrane into the oligodendrocyte. You need that to be broken down into the acetate and aspartate. And why is that? Because you need to make the acetyl-CoA groups to make this fatty coat around the axon. So you have to have that acetate, that's a key component, to make these acetyl groups to make a lipid. So you need that on the outside to make that plastic coating on the electrical wiring. We target in the lower left here the oligodendrocyte, and we can transfect about 80% of the cells with our AAV oligo-1 vector. If you use an AAV9, this has been shown in mice, you only get about 20% of the oligodendrocytes transfected. What can we use for a surrogate marker? Now, I've shown you some very impressive videos of patients that have been treated. That's not enough for the FDA. They want to know, well, how can we prove in the lab that this is working? Let's start with the NAA. I told you NAA builds up in the neurons, transferred to the oligodendrocytes. We know it's high in the extracellular space. The CSF NAA is about 380 on average in our patients. Look how much it drops after treatment, all the way down to about 40. You and I run NAA levels in our CSF closer to 20. So we're approaching normalcy of NAA levels in the cerebrospinal fluid. And urine also follows a similar pathway of improvement. If you individually look at these patients, look at the dramatic drop in almost every one of these patients. It drops from levels 400-ish all the way down into double digits. So it's a very impressive drop in NAA. The FDA likes these data. They have tended to come back and say, well, how can you give us somebody that's 10 years old with Canavan? What do we know what their NAA level is? We don't know because you wouldn't be getting spinal taps in normal patients typically over the course of 10 years. So we have an excellent surrogate marker with CSF NAA levels, concentration decreasing quite dramatically. Excellent secondary surrogate marker is myelin volume. And if you look at the myelin volume in the MRI, it's kind of depictive of what happens in these patients. In the blue, it's the greenish blue, and the yellow, you see a significant growth in the myelin. And the graph above it shows you that we have a very nice increase in the amount of myelin being in the white matter tracts in the deep part of the brain. And we have significant myelin growth. So we have two excellent surrogate endpoints for the FDA to go with very strong clinical data. And if you look at these graphs, this is important. It epitomizes what we all strive for. Let's treat the patients as young as we can because we know they're going to do better. The graph on the left shows you treating patients under the age of 2. The graph on the right shows everybody included in that. And our gross motor functional outcome is measured as higher if you're treated under the age of 2. If you look at the natural history in the green bar, you can see that's the line that goes towards fatality. They just don't develop a motor function. Yet in the treated patients, the summation of the graph is the patients are getting better from a motor perspective. Part of the problem is if you put a 5-year-old and treat a 5-year-old with this disease, which I would do as a clinician, they already have significant white matter destruction, white matter loss, so they're not going to walk. If they're coming in and not crawling yet, they're probably not going to walk. But we're still going to stabilize the disease and hopefully give them a better life. Here we are on our regulatory and commercial timelines. We've treated 15 patients to date. We're going to have, we're up to 4 years data on the initial patients. We're going to have data on 14 patients near the end of this year. The START meeting I'd like to comment a little on. We had our first one late last year, and then a meeting with all of us together with the FDA, and it was thrilling to hear them. They basically said to us, how can we help you get this across the finish line? What are the steps that we can help you with manufacturing, and how can we make your long-term data look good? And they basically said, give us more long-term data. When we first met with them a couple years, 3 years ago, they said, we probably need to do a randomized study, and we were all kind of slinking down upset, but it really helps to be part of the START program. And if you can apply for that and the FDA continues it, I would encourage that to happen. So hopefully by early 26, middle of the year, we can do our BLA filing. So we have a bank of capsids. That's what Myrtle's technology is, that target the oligodendrocytes. You can target oligodendrocytes for many other diseases listed here. These are all rare diseases if you look at the numbers of patients. We don't know exactly how many patients with Canavan the disease there are in the world, but we do know that once you have a treatment for this, which we're very close to getting approval, these numbers will go up. That number might be 1,500 if you read about it now. It always seems to be 1 in 100,000 that's published, but that number is probably much higher. Similar to spinal muscular atrophy, when we finally got Zolgensma out, the numbers went up probably even sextupled over what they thought it would be. And you could extend this oligodendrocyte targeting to other diseases of myelin, for example, even myelin breakdown. What if we could target the oligodendrocytes for multiple sclerosis? What if we could target the oligodendrocyte for Lou Gehrig's disease? There are 56 other leukodystrophies that we have the potential to target. So it's an exciting time to be part of a company like this. I hope that I can come back here in a year and say that, we no longer have the heartbreak of seeing these patients die. We have the joy of seeing them live a normal life, and maybe we'll even have one walk in here and talk to you guys. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Myrtle.